My name is Elena, and I never thought a Saturday morning at the office would change my life forever. I am a senior analyst at Fusion Holdings, a massive global company. Usually, the marble lobby is quiet on weekends, but I had to drop off some last-minute reports for a project deadline. Since my babysitter was sick, I brought my 6-year-old daughter Lily with me. She was being an absolute angel, holding her little juice box and humming to herself while I double-checked my bag near the reception desk. Suddenly, the glass door swung open with a loud, aggressive bang. It was the new vice president, Julian, the man who had been making my life a living hell for the past month. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than my monthly salary, and his face was twisted in a mask of pure rage. He didn't even say hello. He just marched straight toward me, waving a piece of paper in the air like a weapon. "You incompetent fool!" he screamed, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "This filing error is going to cost us millions. Why are you even here with a brat?" I felt my heart drop into my stomach. I knew the filing was correct, but he wouldn't let me speak. Lily was startled by his screaming. She jumped slightly, and the straw of her juice box slipped from her hand. A small splash of orange liquid landed right on the tip of Julian's polished designer shoes. The world seemed to stop moving. He looked down at his shoe, then up at my daughter with a look of pure disgust. "You little animal," he hissed. He didn't just yell this time. He moved with a speed that caught me off guard. Before I could pull her away, he stepped forward. I moved to shield Lily, placing myself between them. "I am so sorry, sir. It was an accident," I began to say, my voice trembling. But he didn't want an apology. He raised his hand and delivered a stinging slap across my left cheek. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent lobby. My head snapped to the side, and for a second I saw stars. Lily let out a piercing wail, clutching my leg. Julian didn't look sorry at all. He leaned in close, his breath smelling like expensive coffee and malice. "Know your place, peasant," he sneered. "You're fired. Get out before I have security throw you and your mistake into the street right now. You are nothing to this company." I stood frozen in the center of the lobby. My cheek burned with a heat I had never felt before, and my skin felt like it was pulsating. I didn't scream back. I didn't cry, even though my eyes were stinging from the shock. I looked down at Lily, who was sobbing into my skirt, her tiny hands shaking. I needed to be strong for her. But as I held her, I looked up. I looked directly at the black dome of the security camera mounted on the marble pillar. I knew exactly who was on the other side of that lens. Most people at this company think the chairman is a myth, a shadow who runs things from overseas. They don't know his face, but I do. I am married to him. His name is Kenji, and to the world, he is the head of a massive, legitimate empire. To the underworld, he is the Korean Mafia boss that nobody dares to cross. I leaned down and whispered into Lily's ear, "Don't cry, baby. Mommy isn't hurt. I'm just moving some pieces on a board." I stood up, ignored the HR assistant, Sheila, who tried to make me sign papers, and walked out the door with my head held high. As I drove home, my mind raced back to how I ended up in this position. 3 years ago, I was just a math genius struggling to pay my bills. I met Kenji at a small library, and we fell in love over old books and quiet conversations. I knew who he was, the heir to a powerful syndicate who was working tirelessly to turn his family's business into a legal global powerhouse. We married in secret because he wanted me to have a normal life, free from the shadows of his past. He supported my career, but he never made calls to get me promoted. He wanted me to earn my way, and I did. I loved my job at Fusion Holdings, and for a long time, it was perfect. But then Julian arrived. He was the nephew of Arthur, a powerful board member who thought he owned the world because of his bloodline. For the last month, Julian had been gaslighting me. He took credit for my complex algorithms and made jokes about my modest clothes and my old car. He had no idea that I lived in a multi-million-dollar estate or that I was the queen of the very castle he was trying to climb daily. When I walked through the front doors of our home, the house was silent, but the air felt heavy. I found Kenji in the darkened living room. He wasn't reading or working. He was sitting in a leather chair, staring at a giant monitor. On the screen, the lobby footage was playing on a loop. He was watching the moment Julian's hand hit my face over and over again. His eyes weren't angry, they were cold, which was much worse. Kenji reached for his encrypted phone. I knew what that meant. In his world, a slap was answered with something permanent. He didn't care about corporate rules or HR policies. No, I said, stepping into the light so he could see the faint red mark on my face. He stood up, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists. If you do this your way, Kenji, he becomes a martyr. He gets to go away quietly. I don't want that. I touched his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. I want him to watch himself become absolutely nothing. I want to use the law and the company to dismantle him piece by piece. I want him to regret the day he was born and the day he touched my child. The next morning, I didn't stay in bed and hide. I had work to do. Even though I was fired, I knew my contract had specific clauses that Julian hadn't bothered to read. I went back to the office under the guise of collecting my personal belongings from my desk. Julian saw me and laughed, calling out to the entire floor that the trash was finally taking itself out. I ignored him and focused on my computer. While I was packing my photos and my spare sweater, I quietly ran a script I had developed months ago. As a senior analyst, I had built the company's data security backbone. My script wasn't a virus, it was a mirror. It allowed me to see every file Julian touched in real time. I had suspected for weeks that he was stealing money, but he was clever. He was using my login credentials to hide his tracks, making it look like I was the one embezzling. He thought he had set the perfect trap by firing me before I could find out. He didn't realize I had just invited him into my own digital cage. Every move he made now belonged to me and my husband's legal team. Monday morning came, and Julian decided to take his victory public. He posted a leadership video on LinkedIn. In the video, he sat behind his big mahogany desk, looking smug. He talked about corporate hygiene and how important it was to remove toxic, low-performing elements to keep a company healthy. He didn't name me, but everyone in our industry knew who he was talking about because of the office background. The comments section was disgusting. Dozens of corporate climbers and sycophants were praising him for his tough leadership. My phone started blowing up with texts from my former colleagues. They were terrified. "Elena, is it true?" one asked. "He's saying you were caught stealing." Another friend, Tasha, told me that Julian was planning to replace my entire team with his own friends. I felt a surge of anger, but I channeled it into my work. I sat in my home office, watching the data mirror on my screen. I saw him moving hundreds of thousands of dollars into an offshore account, thinking he was a genius. He was so busy gloating on social media that he didn't notice the digital shadows following him. He was building his own gallows, while the world cheered for him. While I was building the corporate case, I realized I had another weapon. Lily had been wearing her smartwatch, a high-tech gift Kenji had given her for her birthday. It was designed for her safety, and it had an automatic recording feature that triggered during high-stress moments or loud noises. I opened the file on my laptop and pressed play. The audio was crystal clear. You could hear Julian's hateful words, the sound of the juice box hitting the floor, and then the sharp, sickening crack of the slap. Lily's immediate, heartbroken sob followed. Hearing it again made my blood boil, but as a professional, I knew exactly what this was. This wasn't just workplace drama, it was a criminal assault on a minor's mother in a public space. I had the physical evidence I needed to put him in handcuffs right now. But I wasn't ready to call the police yet. If I called them now, Arthur would just pay for a fancy lawyer and sweep it under the rug. No, I needed the board to turn on him first. I needed the public to see him for the monster he truly was. I saved the audio file to 3 different cloud drives for safety. I decided to follow the proper channels one last time, just to prove they were broken. I sent a formal, detailed HR complaint via email, attaching the medical report of the bruising on my cheek. I waited for a response. 2 hours later, I didn't get a call from HR. Instead, I got a cease and desist letter from the company's legal department, signed by a man named Victor. It turned out the HR director was a close friend of Julian's uncle, Arthur. The letter claimed that I was mentally unstable and that I was trying to extort the company using a staged incident. They threatened to sue me for millions in defamation if I ever spoke about the slap or my termination to anyone. They thought they were being tough. They thought they were burying me. In reality, they were just providing me with a paper trail of their own corruption. They were showing that the entire leadership chain was complicit in covering up a crime. I saved the letter into a folder titled Evidence for the End. They were handing me the rope they would eventually hang by. I felt a cold sense of satisfaction as I filed it away. Kenji stayed out of the office, but his influence began to move like a cold wind through the market. He didn't use his Mafia connections, he used his financial power. A new, mysterious investment firm appeared out of nowhere. This firm started quietly buying up the debt of all the smaller companies that Julian managed within the Kyujin umbrella. Julian was too arrogant to see the danger. He saw the interest from this mystery firm as a sign that he was doing a great job. He told Arthur that he was being scouted for a promotion to a higher executive level. He started acting like he already had the job, buying a new sports car and telling people he was going to be the next CEO. He had no idea that I was the one sitting in my living room, pointing Kenji's legal and financial teams toward his weakest spots. We were tightening the noose, and he was mistaking it for a crown. He was bragging to everyone that the chairman had finally noticed his talent and vision. Little did he know, the chairman only had eyes for his destruction. The trap was almost fully set for the grand reveal. A few days later, Julian called my personal cell phone. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear what he had to say. "Elena," he said, his voice dripping with fake pity. "I'm calling because I'm a nice guy. I've been looking over the mess you left behind. You know, the missing money?" He was talking about the embezzlement he was doing himself. "I can make this all go away," he continued. "I have a document here. It's a confession. If you sign it and admit you were the one who took the funds, I'll convince the board not to file criminal charges. You'll just be banned from the industry, but at least you won't be in a jail cell away from your kid." I gripped the phone, my knuckles turning white. He was trying to gaslight me into taking the fall for his own crimes. "I'll think about it," I said calmly, making sure to record the call. He laughed and hung up, convinced he had finally broken me. He thought he was the cat, and I was the mouse. He didn't realize that the mouse was actually a lioness waiting for the right moment to strike back. As I dug deeper into the mirrored files, I found something even bigger than the embezzlement. Julian and Arthur weren't just stealing money, they were planning a hostile takeover. They were gathering secret information to blackmail the unknown chairman, my husband. They thought the chairman was a weak, elderly man they could easily push out of the way. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They were looking for financial skeletons, but Kenji's business was cleaner than a whistle because he had spent years scrubbing it. However, Julian had started creating fake evidence of illegal activity to link to the chairman. This was a direct attack on my family. It wasn't just about a slap anymore. It was a war for the survival of everything we had built. I realized that the slap was actually the best thing that could have happened. It made them overconfident. It made them think they had already won, so they stopped being careful. They were leaving digital footprints everywhere in their haste to seize power. I spent all night documenting their treason against the company they claimed to lead. Every fake document was another nail in their coffins. I decided it was time to give Julian exactly what he wanted, a shortcut to his own destruction. I leaked a very specific, encrypted file into the shared drive that I knew he was monitoring. To an untrained eye, it looked like the company's secret tax strategy, the holy grail of corporate secrets that could be used to destroy the chairman's reputation. I watched through the mirror as Julian found the file. He didn't even verify it. He was so hungry for power that he downloaded it immediately. He called Arthur, sounding breathless and excited. "I have it. This is the leverage we need to take over the board. We can announce the takeover at the gala." He thought he had found the weapon to kill a king. In reality, that file was a digital tracker. The moment he tried to use it or share it, it would broadcast his exact location and his intent to commit corporate espionage directly to our security team. He was carrying a tracking device and calling it a treasure. He was so blinded by his own greed that he couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel was an oncoming train. While the corporate trap was being set, the social trap was beginning to spring. I have a friend in the tech world named Leo who specializes in viral marketing. We created a whistleblower account on TikTok and posted a blurry, low-quality photo of the slap that had been taken by a delivery driver who happened to be in the lobby that day. The caption was simple: "Is this how Cujin Holdings treats mothers? This executive slapped a woman in front of her child. Is this the leadership they brag about?" Within 6 hours, the video had 100,000 views. By the next morning, it had 1 million. People were outraged. The public didn't need to know my name or Julian's name yet. They just saw the injustice. The cancel culture sirens were starting to wail, and they were headed straight for the Cujin Holdings headquarters. The brand that Kenji had worked so hard to make pure was being dragged through the mud, and the board was starting to panic. Arthur tried to suppress the video using legal threats, but it was too late. The internet had already judged them, and the verdict was guilty. The company's stock price began to dip as the TikTok video reached mainstream news. Julian didn't apologize. Instead, he went on a local business news channel to set the record straight. He looked into the camera and called me a disgruntled ex-employee with a history of emotional instability. He claimed the photo was photoshopped and that I was trying to shake down a successful company. His arrogance was his undoing. By going on TV and lying, he was creating more evidence for me. Every word he spoke was a new lie that I could disprove with the HD footage and the audio recording. He thought he had the platform. He didn't realize that the internet loves a villain, and he was playing the part perfectly. My former colleagues started calling me again, this time to apologize for not standing up for me. They saw the monster he was becoming, and they were ready to jump ship. Even some of the board members started questioning Arthur about his nephew's behavior on live television. The pressure was mounting, and the cracks in their defense were starting to show for everyone to see. One evening, I got a nervous knock at my door. It was Julian's personal assistant, a young woman named Nora, who had always looked like she was on the verge of tears at the office. She was shaking and holding a small USB drive. "I can't sleep," she whispered. "I saw what he did. I saw him tell the security team to delete the footage from that Saturday." She told me that she had been the one tasked with wiping the servers, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. She had secretly made a backup of the original, high-definition security footage, the one that showed every detail of the assault. She also had copies of the emails where Julian told Sheila to make Elena disappear. This was the final piece of the puzzle. I now had the smoking gun that proved a conspiracy to hide a crime. I thanked Nora and promised her she would have a job for life when this was over. She left, looking like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. I sat in my dark office, looking at the clear video of Julian's hand striking me. It was time to finish this. Arthur called for an emergency gala at the finest hotel in the city. On the surface, it was to celebrate the company's growth, but everyone knew the real reason. They were going to announce the new CEO, Julian, and present the evidence that would force the chairman to resign. Julian was in heaven. I saw through my mirror that he had spent $20,000 on a custom tuxedo. He was practicing his victory speech in his office, talking about vision and hard work. He truly believed he was the smartest person in the room. He sent me one last text. "Watch the news tonight, Alina. It's the last time you'll ever see this logo without thinking of your failure." I didn't reply. I just looked at the gown Kenji had bought for me. A masterpiece of black silk and diamonds. The stage was set and the actors were in place. I felt a calm power flowing through me as I got ready for the night. This wasn't just a gala. It was a reckoning. I was going to reclaim my life in front of everyone who doubted me. Just as I was getting ready to leave for the gala, there was a loud knock at my front door. I opened it to find 2 police officers. "Elena?" one asked. "We have a warrant for your arrest for grand larceny and corporate embezzlement." My heart stopped for a beat. Julian had actually done it. He had planted the stolen company funds into my personal savings account using a sophisticated hack. For a moment, I felt a flash of genuine fear. If I went to jail now, I would miss the gala. Julian would win. The officers were reaching for their handcuffs. But then I remembered who I was. I wasn't just a victim. I was a senior analyst who had been tracking every single move he made. Wait, I said, my voice steady. Before you do that, I need you to look at these audit logs. I showed them the data mirror records that proved the money had been moved from Julian's computer into my account just 3 hours ago. I showed them my whistleblower status with the federal agency. The officers realized they had been used as pawns in a much bigger game. The lead officer lowered his handcuffs. "This is a setup," he muttered. I nodded. "He wants me in a cell so I can't show up tonight. I'm working with the feds on a much larger case of corporate fraud." I explained the situation, and after a few phone calls to verify my whistleblower ID, the officers apologized for the intrusion. "Do you want us to arrest him now?" they asked. I looked at the clock. The gala was just starting. "No," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Let him go to the gala. Let him get on that stage in front of the cameras and the board. I want the arrest to be as public as the slap. I want the whole world to see him in handcuffs." The officers agreed to follow me to the hotel in an unmarked car. They would wait in the wings until I gave the signal. I grabbed my clutch, kissed Lily goodbye, and stepped into the limousine Kenji had sent for me. My pulse was steady, and my mind was sharp. The final battle was finally here. Kenji was waiting for me in the car. He looked like a king in his dark suit, his presence filling the entire space with power. He looked at my face, where the mark had faded but the memory remained. "One last time, Elena," he said softly. "Do you want me to handle this? I can have the entire board removed by midnight. I can make sure he never speaks again." I reached over and took his hand. His skin was warm, a sharp contrast to the coldness of the night. "No," I said. "This started with him trying to make me feel small in my own workplace. I need to be the one who opens the door to his nightmare. I want to see the look on his face when he realizes that the peasant he slapped is the woman who owns his life." Kenji nodded, a look of pride in his eyes. He knew I was right. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. We pulled up to the hotel, and the paparazzi flashes began to pop like tiny explosions. I stepped out, ready to face my enemies and take what was mine. The ballroom was a sea of gold and white. Every major player in the industry was there. Julian was already at the podium, holding a glass of champagne. He was laughing, shaking hands, and acting like he already owned the building. He looked like the definition of success to those who didn't know the truth. Suddenly, the room went quiet. I walked through the double doors. I wasn't the disgruntled employee they expected. I was wearing a gown that cost more than most people's houses, and I walked with the confidence of a woman who knew exactly what was about to happen. Julian saw me, and his smile vanished. He actually choked on his drink for a second. He regained his composure and leaned into the microphone. "Security," he shouted, his voice echoing. "Remove this trespasser. She's a criminal who just had a warrant out for her arrest." The security guards moved toward me, but they didn't grab me. Instead, they stopped 5 feet away and bowed deeply, acknowledging my true status. The room erupted in whispers as the power dynamic shifted in a single heartbeat. Julian froze. "What are you doing? I told you to throw her out," he screamed. The room was buzzing with confusion. Then, the giant screens behind the podium, the ones meant to show the success of Kyujin Holdings, flickered and turned black. A second later, a video began to play. It wasn't a blurry TikTok clip. It was the high-definition security footage Nora had saved from the lobby. The entire room watched in horrific silence as Julian screamed at a 6-year-old child and then delivered a brutal slap to my face. The audio was turned up to the maximum. Every hateful word he said was heard by every person in that room. The sound of the slap seemed to vibrate the very floor. People gasped. Some women turned away in disgust. Arthur looked like he was having a heart attack. Julian himself was shaking, his face turning a sickly shade of white. He looked at the screen, then at the crowd, then back at me, unable to speak as his world crumbled around him. The evidence was undeniable, and the audience was captivated by his public downfall. The chairman's voice, Kenji's voice, boomed over the speakers, though he was standing right there in the shadows. He walked out from behind the curtain and onto the stage. The room went so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Nobody had ever seen the chairman in person. He walked straight past Julian as if he were a piece of trash on the sidewalk. Kenji walked to the edge of the stage, reached down and took my hand, pulling me up beside him. He kissed my hand in front of everyone. "I would like to introduce you all to my wife," he said, his voice cold and steady. "The woman who has been the real brain behind our most successful algorithms for 3 years." The silence was broken by a collective gasp. Julian actually fell back against the podium, his knees giving out. He looked like he was about to vomit. The unknown chairman wasn't a myth. He was the man whose wife Julian had slapped. The board members immediately began distancing themselves from Arthur and his disgraced nephew. The game was over, and the king had arrived to protect his queen. The police officers I had spoken to earlier stepped out from the wings of the stage. They didn't go for me. They went straight for Julian. "You're under arrest for assault, embezzlement, and evidence tampering," they announced. They turned him around and clicked the handcuffs into place right there on the stage, in front of all the cameras. Arthur tried to intervene, but a legal team from the federal government stepped forward with another set of papers. "You're being removed from the board effective immediately for conspiracy and fraud," they told him. Julian started to cry. He actually sobbed, begging me to help him. "Elena, please, I have a family. Don't do this." I looked down at him from the stage. I thought about Lily crying in the lobby. I thought about the slap. "So do I said quietly. "And you should have realized that before you touched mine. You wanted me to know my place? This is it." He was led away in shame while the cameras captured every second of his humiliation. The room erupted in applause for the true leaders. The aftermath was swift. Julian and Arthur were sentenced to years in prison. The company's reputation was actually saved because the public loved the story of the secret queen taking down the bully. Kenji and I decided it was time to step out of the shadows. I was appointed as the new CEO of the primary subsidiary, and I turned it into the most parent-friendly workplace in the country. A few months later, I was back in the lobby on a Saturday. This time, I wasn't there to drop off reports. I was there for the unveiling of a new statue dedicated to workplace safety and respect. Lily was with me, running around the marble floor. She accidentally dropped her juice box again. A young intern rushed over to help her, smiling and telling her it was okay. I looked up at the security camera and winked. I was a CEO, a wife, and a mother. But most importantly, I was a woman who had won the right way. My family was safe, my dignity was restored, and the company was finally in good hands. We walked out into the sunshine, finally free.